All right, so thank you all. It's great that we've come to this point. It's the last session. So it's a panel discussion. I think we have a few themes and topics that we can use for discussion, but I wanted to maybe let David Levy get us going with any reflections, or maybe each of the panelists can go around and give their thoughts and reflections, and then we can start discussions. I don't know, David.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, also thank everybody. I mean, oftentimes when I go into something like this, I think it's the same old thing, but I really learned a lot the last couple of days. And it was just great participation, great talker, great speakers, and everything else. So that's all I'll say for now.
Okay, so where do we want? I don't know if anyone wants to start. Maybe we had some talking points or some general topics or discussion, but I think maybe picking up where you left, David Levy, and your group, of what are the future directions for modeling in tobacco regulatory science. I think a lot of us that were leading the sessions were modelers. Be good to hear from the non-modelers, of course, from the regulator, your thoughts in terms of where should we go? What are the key priorities, and what are the key topics and issues that we should be thinking about as we move forward? So I don't know, maybe I'll ask Mike, if you don't mind. I always know you have good.
Sure.
ideas.
I mean, I found the conference very interesting and very informative. I always learn a lot. I'm not a modeler, so I've been through David Levy's papers and his grant applications many times, and I keep learning every time I go through, because basically what I see modeling doing is specifying relationships, and there are objectives. So there are different purposes for modeling. So from public health, I think it's really essential. For regulators and decision makers, you want to have science to help guide your decision making in areas of uncertainty. So are you getting feedback from me? I'm sorry. No, okay. So that was one area. So why model? The industry needs to model also, and I made that point earlier. So there's different purposes, but what to model is the data, and we need more data. We need better data. One of the things that I find as a non-modeler, but who does a lot of survey data collection, spending oodles of money doing that, is having the specification of the model. I sort of learn where there are gaps in what we're measuring, so we can build better models and test those relationships better. So getting better data, I think, is really important. And then how to model, I learned a lot about different modeling approaches, Bayesian modeling, agent-based modeling, the cohort approaches, and so on. My head is swimming, which ones work best. It gets a little bit into the weeds, I guess, but at some point we need to figure out, I guess they all contribute in different ways, triangulating an answer to the question. And then where to model, international, federal, state, locally, and I think all of the above for different purposes. And one thing that I think is, there's been some discussion today that I think is very helpful is, who are we modeling for? The consumers, who's the consumers of this? I mean, obviously you start out with regulatory science, and we have the FDA that was given regulatory authority over tobacco products. But, there are decision makers, Congress, state legislatures, there's the industry, there's the tobacco control community that I think is, frankly, moving forward with policies that are probably ill-conceived, not science-based, and may be doing more harm than good. And certainly modeling of the type that we've heard over the last 3 days could be very helpful to try to get us back on track. Anyway, those are my comments. I want to thank everybody. I've always enjoyed participating in this group and always learn a great deal. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Should we go around and then maybe, I don't know, I can just call names as I see them in my screen. So next would be David Abrams. And any reflections?
Yes, so just echo what Mike said, and thanks to everybody. This was a superb conference. So a couple of points. I think finally we have a CAsToR center that you guys are heading that brings together the single most important mission of the FDA regulation. And I want to just say it out loud, even though it's obvious, and that is the public health standard, which is a population standard to more rapidly reduce the death, disease burden, and excess cost of largely a lifetime of continued smoking that leads to 500,000 premature deaths. And I think the single biggest priority of modeling is to perhaps place a much more precise spotlight on how modeling assures that we can answer that complex public health question, which includes users and non-users, youth and adults, in a single model that ends with public health impact of saving 500,000 lives per year who die unnecessarily, largely from combusted tobacco. And I think we have tools, we have models, and we have a critical mass, but it hasn't been brought to bear in the strongest way possible to integrate into what I really love David Mendez saying, which is systems thinking. And that means looking at the public health impact of the input stocks and flows of both youth and adults, and the harms of different products along the harm continuum in a way that properly captures what the data are telling us, and looking at the ultimate outcome of optimizing, saving lives in the best possible way. And I don't think we've fully used all of those tools. And I would just say the biggest example of this is what was brought up about COVID. Just again to emphasize, the COVID modeling within 8 months has become a news headline on every news channel with flexible, rapid, real-time input into those graphs by state and by other areas where they are modeling what amounts to 500,000 deaths and the urgency of that. Well, do we need to remind us that we have 500,000 deaths every single year from tobacco? And I think we can do much more with the tools we have. I don't think we're maximizing the utility of the 5 waves of path data to fully inform the longitudinal flows of youth off-ramps, on-ramps, and the differential harm of the different products that have to simultaneously be looked at. And I think the biggest danger we see that modeling in your center and going forward can prevent is what we've seen so far that Mike alluded to, and that is the narrow-minded focus on one aspect of the system, simply like blind men and elephants or blind humans and elephants. You can pick Youth Gateway up and ignore differential harm of differential products and ignore that it may be an off-ramp more than an on-ramp when you use population impact as your outcome. As David Levy has shown, and as Raphael showed in that recent joint point analysis study, that the net rate of combusted harmful tobacco has dropped more rapidly and significantly, even as we worry about e-cigarettes going up. The differential impact of menthol and flavors, and of the kind of work Dorothy's doing with taking the nicotine out of the most combustible products, is all related to complex modeling, that you cannot just pick one piece of it and ignore all the others. I think Benjamin's study that we participated in on simulating the 6 to 8 million lives saved if we took very low nicotine also included the fact that we had alternative, adequate nicotine satisfying products in our equation. So we can't leave out one piece of the system and simply say that we saved 8 million lives over the next few years because it was only very low nicotine products. It wasn't. It was the systems model that we were asked to comment on in the expert system group. And finally, I think systems thinking with this modeling is the only way to address the public health standard. You can't leave a piece of it out. You can't talk about teens without adults. You can't talk about non-users without users. You can't talk about flows away from the most harmful products on the continuum. And modeling is the only way you can quantify and make explicit all of those aspects that ladder up to the public health standard of saving 500,000 lives per year more rapidly through regulation and policy than we've ever done before. So, I think we just saw the potential here, but we have a lot of work to do to maximize and realize the value that modeling plays in informing the policy of the public health standard to save lives, and not to pick a piece of the model and leave out some of the other pieces for some other agenda that is more narrow and perhaps more politically focused or more emotionally focused than what the science is telling us.
Thank you, David. Thank you for your comments, and these are great reflections. Why don't we move on to Ben Appleberg, and if you mind giving any thoughts or thoughts?
Sure. Thanks so much for inviting me to be a part of this. This workshop, this symposium was really great. I learned quite a bit, and it's really great to see how much work is coming out of this CAsToR. So, as the FDA rep up here, I'll just reiterate or reinforce what was said, and what Mitch said on day one. I think it goes without saying that the work of you all and other computational modelers is extremely valuable to informing FDA's regulatory actions. As David just talked about, our standard is about population health, and this is really a way to take something that's very complex, understanding impacts to all these different groups and what that means, and translating that into something that's digestible and meaningful to people. I do think that some of the points that were raised throughout the last three days about where we could head are good ones that I wanted to kind of flag. I think for one, thinking about kind of what is the range of outcomes that we're looking at. I know that mortality has been a big focus, and the data tends to be much more readily available for mortality, but it makes it a little difficult to sort of take into account, as was just being talked about, the kind of impacts to current users versus the impacts to youth. The timescales in which this is happening are quite different, and so making sense of that, I think, is sometimes a challenge. So sort of thinking about other tools or other ways to kind of make sense. How should we be thinking about those two different time scales for impact? I think the issues around health equity and being able to understand not just what a regulatory action, what kind of impact it might have overall, but what impact it might have with respect to disparities and improving health equity, I think is also really valuable. And, I'm glad to see that that's an area of focus. I made a note here also to kind of just remind us of another point that was raised. I mean, sometimes it can be really difficult to sort of make sense of different modeling approaches, and the findings that are generated from them. And I think an idea that was brought up and discussed here about, what parts of these modeling approaches can be standardized? Are there common inputs that generally there's a consensus on that could be used as a starting place? I think that could really help to I don't know, take out some of the variability, in terms of trying to make sense of the findings of different models. So a lot was talked, Raphael talked about the smoking history generator, and, there's probably more consensus that can be, brought to bear on things like rates of initiation, cessation, mortality rates with respect to, or disease risk rates with respect to different types of products, so that we can really, say, okay, let's all sort of work off of, one set or just a few sets of kind of status quo scenarios, and then really begin to look at what are the implications of different policy options. I think that direction could also be informative to industry, who are developing models and including those in their applications. And it sort of requires a deep dive to understand what each of these different things is doing under the hood and trying to make sense of those. So I think the leadership, though, from this group can really contribute to like moving in that type of a direction. So that's all I'll say for now. Thanks again for setting this up and for having me be a part of it.
Thank you, Ben. Great thoughts and comments, and maybe before asking Dorothy for her remarks, I wanted just to ask you one thing about the last point, and it's related, for instance, to the fact, or I guess what I heard from Mitch Seller. He was saying that there's like a standard or some guidelines for the industry of how to do what if scenarios, and maybe you just brought right now the issue that maybe we could come up with a set of maybe standard parameters that could be used maybe for industry models or anyone else as a starting point, and how can we make that happen? Because I think certainly we feel in CISNET and in CAsToR that we can't play that role in terms of, for instance, releasing this is the set of initiation and cessation rates based on what's been fitted up to now, and this is maybe status quo scenario 1, 2, 3 for anyone who wants to play. Yeah. So do you see any which mechanisms could help?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what Mitch mentioned was a draft guidance that it's actually been out for quite a long time, and it really is. Basically, I mean, it's not even a final guidance, so it's kind of FDA. It was FDA's thinking at that time. It's pretty high level. I mean, essentially just saying, document, be transparent, to make it clear what you're doing. So there is potentially a lot more that could be done. I mean, I think in the interim, just getting that information out there, whether it's publishing it, making it available, or sort of communicating more broadly those tools, I think would be valuable. And then there's probably a role for FDA, to be able to, to point to that as one source. I mean, even if it's not part of a formal guidance or, incorporated into some formal documentation, the industry is looking for direction and something that, the agency would support. So I think, you know, I mean, a lot of that is on us as an agency to communicate what we want to see. But I think that sort of having the expertise to have generated this work, to be regularly publishing on it, just adds credibility to the, you know, to the data and information that you all put out there.
Thank you. Dorothy, you have.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful symposium. And I think what's really become apparent throughout the symposium is how it's important to have integrated, systematic, and multidisciplinary research. And, you know, I know working with David Mendes on the TIPSAC report, it was just wonderful how much richer he made my science going forward after working with him, you know, just understanding what are some of the key parameters that are important in terms of determining public health impact. In terms of going forward, this is kind of my vision. I think it would be really important to establish priorities in terms of what are some of the key areas that need to be addressed. And some of these areas could be reactive, that is, we need to address some of the needs of the current situation. So some of those needs are, what do we do with flavors on electronic cigarettes? What might we consider in terms of nicotine dose? Should there be a cap on nicotine dose on electronic cigarettes? Those are some key issues that we're currently facing. But I think it would be also important to think proactively, what are some of the measures that we can take to have a significant impact on public health? That is, you know, should we, my favorite topic, reduce the levels of nicotine content in cigarettes, and what kind of impact will it have if we, on the use of alternative nicotine delivery systems in the current, what Jody called the ecosystem, but then also thinking about manipulating that system. What would happen, for example, if we did have a reduced nicotine content product standard, but also had no flavors on electronic cigarettes, or if we had flavors, or if we had a nicotine cap on electronic cigarettes, for example, or on nicotine pouches, whatever other non-combustible products that might be out on the market. Also, what would happen if we had a modified risk tobacco or a modified risk claim on some of these alternative nicotine delivery systems? So really thinking about what are some of the measures that we can take to maximize some of the tobacco product regulations that might be coming forward. So I think trying to develop what are going to be the priority topics that we need to address would be the first step. And then the second step, of course, would be to be able to identify what the key parameters are going to be to address those topics. And the systems thinking is you know, certainly has is a key approach to understanding what those key parameters might be. And then thirdly, I think it would be really important to develop a strategic approach, a strategic research approach to address those key parameters. And I think it was really wonderful to hear all the different approaches, experimental approaches that could be used, the discrete choice experiments, the experimental marketplace, the quasi-experimental designs. I think those are all wonderful approaches, scientific methods that we can use to address some of the key parameters, in addition to the traditional clinical trials too, clinical trials approaches. So that's kind of my wish list in terms of how we should move forward. Again, I think that this would be, it will provide a more systematic approach to doing our science.
Thank you, and thank you for I mean, great point, and thank you for laying that so nicely. It's very easy to write notes, and I really like the stepwise suggestion. And I think an emerging theme is about this issue about prioritization and I guess optimization of which are the strategies. Yeah, we start really thinking about using the models to help inform what should be the priorities, and that be a priority for the modeling. Yeah. Cliff, would you mind giving us your thoughts?
Not at all. I appreciate this. I feel like I'm a student who's just attended his class with 7 of his favorite instructors. So this has been great and a nice capstone to the experience of the week. I come at this from a different area of expertise. It overlaps with some of the folks here who are jacks of all trades. But again, I'm not a modeler and don't even play one on TV. You know, as an attorney and policy analyst and specialist and advocate over several decades, I look at this, and some of you have talked about it, so this is derivative of some of your excellent comments. Through the lens of translation and audience, and how the work that many of you are doing can and should be most impactful. And so while this may be stating the obvious, I've been thinking throughout this discussion about the priority of always keeping in mind how will or can my work, this research, be used? How can it have a direct effect, as some of you have emphasized, on informing the right audiences? And you know, obviously FDA is a critical one, and we've heard about state and local governments and the like. I also think in terms of some of the vehicles by which the information reaches those folks, the media is an important one. I think about the fact that, at least in some cases, I mean, think about some of, you know, Ben Appleberg's work related to nicotine reduction, just for, you know, there's some very large examples. Some of this information, much of it, is so critical that it reached decision makers that I think in terms of who do I want to share this with today? It's Sheila Kaplan at the New York Times. You know, it's Carolyn Maloney at the Wall Street Journal. Those are sort of the big examples, but it's the way in which we can frame and provide this information to all of those different critical audience. It's all about audience, whether it's members of Congress or it's a federal agencies or the executive branch, the White House, as well as consumers. And consumers ultimately are making decisions based on this as well. And they don't even know this necessarily, but they receive a sort of trickle down of information that originates with the work that you all and we all are doing. And how it reaches them and in what form is something that I would ask folks to always try to bear in mind because of its direct relevance to, again, the issue and the cause of translation and communicating critical information to folks. So it's kind of fun in the sense that there are multiple quite heterogeneous audiences out there, and it's not always easy to know exactly how one thing should be framed for a given audience or multiple audiences, but those are things that we work out along the way. So I've really been quite reassured, and I think if anything further motivated to make the most of the work that's done through CAsToR, this T-Course, and the extended group of people involved in this sphere, because as has been said by several of you so well, I think you should have dropped mics at the end of your comments. This is going to have a direct impact on serving the net health impact mission of the population standard employed by FDA, but by extension, the decision making that we see all over the country. And unfortunately, as has also been said, too much of the decision making out there is not relying on. It hasn't been reliant on this work. More of it needs to be. And again, it goes toward I think the primacy of our doing a better job, the best job we can at translating and communicating it to the public. So I just want to thank you very much. This has been a great opportunity.
Thank you, Cliff. And I think that is a great point that, for instance, we didn't talk about in the rapid translation, but I think it's really critical that we collaborate with people like you and others that can help us translate and disseminate the work in multiple ways. And I think it's also probably a topic that is relevant to the model accessibility discussions, because in the end, right collaboration or sorry, right dissemination requires effective communication. Well, yeah, Mike raised his hand, so why don't you go ahead, and then we'll go next to David Mendes.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I just wanted to pick up on is in the area of medicine, we have precision medicine, and we don't really have, sort of precision public health or precision public health policy, which has, which is really, the foundation of public health activity. And, obviously a place like the University of Michigan School of Public Health could be a leader in that, but there is a White House group talking about bringing science back into decision-making and policy and scientific integrity. And it would be, really valuable, I think, for your T-course perhaps to reach out to that group to, describe the kind of work they're doing in a lot of different areas. So it's not just tobacco, as we've heard. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I certainly feel that we need to have and that's, I guess, a call to all the modelers, that we need to have a more active role and participating in committees, participating in different, I guess, venues, including study sections and things that and journals as editors or reviewers, because in the end, sometimes we make our work harder by not being an active member of these discussions, and bringing out the issues that are relevant to our field. So, and yeah, thank you for that suggestion. We'll look into the White House task force. So David Mendes, do you have any conclusions as a key member of our center?
Hold it. Second. Yes. So the first thing I would like to say is that I am tremendously impressed with the overall tenor of the symposium. I learn something new every single minute of it, and not just because of the presentation, but the questions and discussions that we were engaged in. Now, there some of the things that has struck me along the way. One of them is that this is not definitely a solitary action. We need a strong collaboration among different expertise individuals that can just give their make their contribution can give the contribution in many different ways in the modeling, but also what we call face validity, that makes sense what we're doing, right? So this kind of again, having a team to work with, I think is extremely valuable, and getting to know that team and be comfortable, that's important. So I echo Dorothy's remark that how much more interesting was when we got together a few years ago and talk about the mental problem and what are the key parameters, and what is that we intended to do, and so on. And that would have not happened but just done by one person in isolation. My collaboration with Ken Warner have been invaluable. So I think our expertise put together, have given it, what I think is produced a very fruitful collaboration in which I learned a lot, in my professional career. And he hasn't learned as much as I have learned simply because he doesn't have much more to learn. But it has been a very fulfilling aspect of collaboration in this area. And now with CAsToR, we feel that more reinforced right now with more expertise and more modelers. So we're getting a community that is ready to launch and produce more output of this type. I remember that the first conference of modelers was put together by David Levy back in 2000, and we were 5 people in the room. And look at what happened now, right? So this is, I think I think they have the momentum now to take off. Another aspect about when we're talking about system thinking, and I want to reiterate something that David Abrams said. We now have the ability to see a comprehensive problem issue, a comprehensive map of the problem, right? We now, it's not about this part of the population or this problem solving that we need to solve, but overall, we can see how, actions in one part of the problem affect actions, or affect other part of the problem. So it makes us discover, now that we have this comprehensive map, that, we are in disadvantage with, for example, the tobacco industry. They have one, single goal, that is maximize their profit. And what happened is when you see what is our goal, we have multiple goals. We cannot, instead of saying, okay, we want to save as many lives as possible, we have to make our objective a little bit more concrete, because some individuals or some groups are looking at, I need to protect kids. That's my goal. Another is, no, I want to protect adults. So that's my goal. Another group is disparities. This is the more important part that I need to protect. So we have a lot of different, well-intentioned groups that are focusing in different aspects. And now we have the opportunity to look at the trade-offs. Look at, say, we are gaining this, but we're losing in this part of the goal. How can we need to actually come up with an objective that we all agree, a set of constraints that we all agree. Yes, we want to save, as many lives as possible, but we have some constraint here. We don't want to do that to the expense of increasing in disparities in such an unruly manner. But we need to specify that, and we can specify that with models. It's and there should be a way that we can compare these goals that different individuals or different factions have. Are we harming kids now, or what we are is putting at risk future adults? Okay, so that's the point. So we can do something for adults now, And, some people say that we're doing that at the risk of harming kids. Are we harming kids now? Or we are making a risk that they suffer, 40 years from now? Okay, so that's the point. At one point you have to say, okay, I have a group of people that I can save now, for example, and a group of people that are the same age that I can prevent something happening 50 years. What do I get? What is the trade? So I have now some sort of common metric. Can we agree in those common metric, or at least discuss those aspects, with a common vision? So that's, I think, more than anything, the fact that we have a view, a comprehensive model, system thinking, will make our communications a little bit easier among us, and have a common goal, or something that we can understand, and understand the trade-offs. So that's something that modeling can do. Aside, I've heard a lot about what else can we do with modeling. I know we surely need more artificial intelligence, or artificial intelligence embedded in tobacco research, because we're generating so much data that is sometimes difficult to make sense of all the intricacies of the data. Can we just do some automatic processes that extract information that we can use to generate hypotheses of modeling, and that's it. And also, right now, can we use our models as data? Okay, a model is a representation of an idea, it's a hypothesis. If you look at a group of experts and put a model together with little data, they have a theory about how things should do. Can we use that? Can we infuse that information into the estimation process of the data? Because now we use the model to put constraints, and we are not looking at plain logistic regression, because that data that we have won't fit, doesn't jive with the plain logistic regression, for example, which is a simple model to estimate probability. But now we have a extra knowledge that we put together based on theory that can make the data a little bit less, or extract parameters that are less noisy. Okay, can we do that? We haven't done much of this, another issue is.
But we're getting close to 4:30, so just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I will stop here.
And wrap up.
I think I'll stop here.
I didn't want to. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay.
I can keep talking a lot.
You can keep going. I know we could all. I think we should switch to the social of our symposium, which unfortunately we couldn't have this time. So I think we want to be mindful of everyone's time. So we're at 4:30. So what I'm going to do is maybe let David Levy close the panel, if there are any final remarks you want to make, and then we'll close the symposium. So go ahead, David. Do you have any final points to make? Or
no, just I'm just continually amazed by the discussions we're having. I mean, like I said, I went into another conference, but I mean, I hope it's all being recorded, and we turn this into really actionable articles and things like that, because I mean, it seems to me so much important was said in the last couple of days, and I almost can't believe it. And that's an economist speaking, no less. So thank you all for this great discussion today.
So I'm sorry. I guess ended the discussion. I think we really could continue, and I think the silver lining I can offer to that is that this won't be the last. We said in our grant that we were going to organize at least 2. So this is the first, and so certainly we'll do the second one to be or fulfill our promise. I think besides that, and jokes aside, I think we all recognize that this has been extremely valuable and helpful, and that there is much more than we need to discuss. I really like the final points that you were making, David Mendes, and I think this it's a little, maybe it doesn't have the priority, or it isn't brought to the center stage, but this discussion on measures is quite relevant, and metrics. And I think we are in a unique position in our tickers to kind of help guide that discussion, which is relevant. So I think we can thank now our panelists and all. Thank you for your comments. This has been great, and on your participation throughout the symposium. I also want to thank our facilitators today that help lead the different discussion groups or breakout room groups. So thank you as well. As David said, we're going to be working on a summary of the meeting and proceedings. So we'll call to many of you for help and to make sure we capture your thoughts and points correctly, and just for general feedback. So stay tuned for that. I want to thank Kate, who was our live captioner. She did a terrific job dealing with people that mumble a lot like me, or that maybe talk too fast when we're presenting, and other challenges like Zoom connections. So thank you so much. She did a fantastic work, and reiterate again the thanks and acknowledgement to all our admin team, to Jen Henry, to MICD, to our Federal Partners funders, to I guess the organization or planning committee. So we'll see you next time. We'll end it here. I'm gonna use this and say next time, hopefully. No, I think next time we'll be in person. So I'm an optimist, so I hope that will be the case. And maybe it will be in 2023, or we'll see how things shape up. But we certainly will be organizing another one, and we look forward to having all of you again. And again, thank you all for coming, participating, and being making this a great symposium. So we'll end there. I don't know, David, anything else before?
No, just thank you, Rafael. Just done an amazing job in bringing this together and being, I'll admit it, the primary moderator. You're unbeatable.
Thank you. Today, Ritesh did a great job helping us moderate all discussions as well. So thank you. And all right. So one last thing I forgot to say. This is the center's Twitter handle. If you use Twitter, make sure to follow us, and we'll be releasing a lot of information there as well as on our website. So other than that, I think we can conclude, and we'll be in touch. Enjoy the weekend and the rest of the summer.